Good morning and welcome to Saturday's Early Morning Intuitive Guidance. Yes, I am a couple minutes late, but it is worth your wait. It is worth your wait today. So I'm going to give it a minute for everybody to pop on here, and we have powerful words today. I'm Dr. Bonnie Nussbaum, America's kick-ass coach and psychologist, here with some words to start you thinking on some things that maybe you haven't particularly thought through deeply. Because again, it's like that fish swimming in water. We've been swimming in this for so long, we don't even recognize it when it's right in front of us. So I'm looking forward to sharing these words with you, and we'll give it a minute and see when a couple of you pop on. But as always, let's start with some breath, because everything moves on the breath. Our entire universe moves on the breath. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Let your shoulders drop. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Breathing, opening to receiving. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Stepping into your divine feminine, which is that open, receptive, connected, community-based part of you. And also stepping into your divine masculine, the seeker part of you, the part of you that addresses what needs to be addressed, the part of you that may come more from a place of competition than total collaboration and cooperation. But again, we want to balance. We want to balance. Good morning, Cindy. You're the first one to pop on. Glad someone finally found me. Was feeling kind of adrift here without my practical rebels. So I'm glad you're here. Welcome, welcome. My little counter didn't go up though either. So I'm wondering if maybe others are here and it hasn't registered you yet. So welcome to all who are on live. Welcome to those of you who are going to watch this after the fact. We got big stuff today. So let me mark the page so I don't lose this here. And I'm thinking most of you probably don't have this book. Goddess Shift, Women Leading for a Change. And I read that two ways. Women leading for a change, we finally get a chance. And women leading for a change, we need things to be different. This is edited by Stephanie Marone, Marohn, Marohn, and the chapter I want to read from is the chapter by Sue Monk Kidd, Kidd. And if you are not familiar, hello Lisa, you're going to like this part, I think. This is good stuff. If you're not familiar with Sue Monk Kidd, it's on your thrift books wish list. Fabulous. She is an amazing writer. She's Southern, and much of her writing has to do with how being raised in the Deep South colored things for her, influenced things for her, and especially her faith base. And so this chapter comes from her book, The Dance of Dissonance, The Dance of the Dissonant Daughter. There we go. Yes. And I believe that would be a very impactful book for you on your journey. And I think this piece I'm going to read is going to be, because it's the powerful story in the book that really sets the stage for the message she's sharing. Hello, Barb. Welcome. Glad you're here. Now we're starting to roll in. I'm like, it's Saturday. Everybody must be sleeping in. But whether you watch this live or whether you watch this after the fact, I really want you to cogitate and feel into these words. Because 3 times, yes, need to read it again. Well, let me read a little part for you today, and hopefully that will launch things again. So this is chapter 26 in the book. If any of you have the book, if not, please get it. It is an amazing compendium of women authors. Let me just tell you a few of who are here. It is just amazing. I'm going to run down my list here. Starhawk, and grab the ones that I mostly know. Madonna, Shirley MacLaine, Whoopi Goldberg, Angelina Jolie, Helen Mirren, Barbara Walters, Michelle Obama, Barbara Lee, that was an amazing story. Sonia Gandhi, that was the one I read last night after, and then Sue Monk Kidd, Sue Zorman. I mean, just powerful, powerful women who have made a huge difference in the experiences of women. Maya Angelou, Olympia Dukakis, Oprah Winfrey, Venus and Serena Williams. So hear this chapter. Hear this chapter. Good morning, Beth. Open your ears wide, your intuitive ears, and really soak this up. Because again, a lot of this is that fish in water thing, where we don't even know when we're experiencing this because we've been steeped in it for so long. The Dance of Dissonance, Sue Monk Kidd. The female soul is no small thing. Neither is a woman's right to define the sacred from a woman's perspective. It was autumn, and everything was turning loose. I was running errands that afternoon. Rain had fallen earlier, but now the sun was out, shining on the tiny beads of water that clung to the trees and sidewalks. The whole world seemed red and yellow and rinsed in light. I parked in front of the drugstore where my daughter Anne, 14, had an after-school job. Leaping a puddle, I went inside. I spotted her right away, kneeling on the floor in the toothpaste section, stocking a bottom shelf. I was about to walk over and say hello when I noticed two middle-aged men walking along the aisle toward her. They looked like everybody's father. They had moosed hair, and they wore knit sport shirts the color of Easter eggs, the kind of shirts with tiny alligators sewn on the chest. It was a detail I would remember later as having ironic symbolism. Tiny alligators. My daughter did not see them coming. Kneeling on the floor, she was intent on getting the boxes of crest lined up evenly. The men stopped, peering down at her. One nudged the other. He said, "Now that's how I like to see a woman," on her knees. The other man laughed. Standing in the next aisle, I froze. I watched the expression that crept into my daughter's eyes as she looked up. I watched her chin drop and her hair fall across her face. This is hard stuff, guys. Seeing her kneel at these men's feet while they laughed at her subordinate posture pierced me through. Can you imagine being this mother? For the previous couple of years, I had been in the midst of a tumultuous awakening. And I believe that's where a lot of us are right now. That's why we're turning out in the numbers we're turning out in at the polling booths. I had been struggling to come to terms with my life as a woman. In my culture, my marriage, my faith, my church, and deep inside myself. It was a process not unlike the experience of conception and labor. There had been a moment, many moments really, when the truth seized me and I conceived of myself as a woman. Or maybe I reconceived myself. At any rate, it had been an extraordinary and surprising time to find myself. A conventionally religious woman in her late 30s, suddenly struck pregnant with a new consciousness, with an unfolding new awareness of what it means to be a woman and what it means to be spiritual as a woman. So I'm going to take an aside here because this taps something for me from Thursday. We were doing a reading, a biblical reading. Well, actually it was Father Richard Rohr speaking on various readings in the Bible, and he was talking about Trinitarian faith. But what struck me was the entire absence of femininity in that whole thing he was talking about. Hello, Lynn. Glad you're here. Welcome. I'm sure there's something here that is meant for your ears today. And when it was time to talk about that reading, it's the Episcopal Bishop of Northern Michigan, a wonderful man, and everybody on the call was female. Everybody on the call was female. And so they're talking about how what Richard Rohr was saying impacted them. And I just couldn't fathom not saying, but where's the femininity? Where's the woman in here? We've got Father, Son, Holy Spirit, which has been, my opinion, sanitized to not be the feminine aspect. And what the hell here? How are we supposed to relate? Yet it is women who hold up the churches. If the women walked away, the churches would grind to a halt. Just saying. So let's keep going here. There had been a moment, many moments really, when truth seized me and I conceived of myself as a woman, or maybe I reconceived myself. A conventionally religious woman in my late 30s suddenly struck pregnant with a new consciousness, with an unfolding new awareness of what it means to be a woman and what it means to be a spiritual woman. Hard labor had followed. For months I inched along, but lately I'd been stuck. I'd awakened enough to know that I couldn't go back to my old way of being a woman, but the fear of going forward was paralyzing. You look at some of the stuff that's happening with women right now. Would you want to be Liz Cheney? Holy shit. So I plodded along, trying to make room for the new consciousness that was unfolding in my life, but without really risking change. And there's that word, risking, right? I have a friend, a nurse, on the obstetrical floor at a hospital who says that sometimes a woman's labor simply stalls. Couldn't have anything to do with her laying on her back, could it? Anyway, the contractions grow weak and the new life, now quite distressed, hangs precariously. The day I walked into the drugstore, I was experiencing something like that, a stalled awakening. We're about to come out of the stalled part, people. Who knows? I may have stalled interminably if I had not seen my daughter on her knees before those laughing men. I cannot to this day explain why the sight of it hit me so forcibly, but to borrow Kafka's image, it came like an ice axe upon a frozen sea, and suddenly all my hesitancy was shattered, just like that. The men's laughter seemed to go on and on. I felt like a small animal in the road, blinded by the light of a truck, knowing some terrible collision is coming, but unable to move. I stared at my daughter on her knees before these men and could not look away. Somehow she seemed more than my daughter. She was my mother, my grandmother, and myself. She was every woman ever born, bent and contained in a small, ageless cameo that bore the truth about a woman's place. In the profile of my daughter, I saw the suffering of women, the confining of the feminine to places of inferiority, and I experienced a collision of love and pain so great I had to reach for the counter to brace myself. This posture will not perpetuate itself in her life, I thought. Still, I didn't know what to do. When I was growing up, if my mother had told me once, she had told me 1,000 times. If you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all. I had heard this from nearly everybody. It was the kind of thing that got cross-stitched and hung up in kitchens all over my native South. Well, the Midwest, we got that nice thing going too. I'd grown up to be a soft-voiced, sweet-mouthed woman who, no matter how assailing the behavior before me, or how much I disagreed with it, responded nicely or else zip-locked my mouth shut. I had swallowed enough defiant words in my life to fill a shelf of books, and I don't tend to swallow them, and that leads to another whole outcome. But it occurred to me that if I abandoned my daughter at this moment, if I simply walked away and was silent, the feminine spirit unfolding inside her might also become crouched and silent. Perhaps she would learn the internal posture of being on her knees. The men with their blithe joke had no idea they had tapped a reservoir of pain and defiance in me. It was rising now, unstoppable by any earthly force. I walked toward them. "I have something to say to you, and I want you to hear it," I said. They stopped laughing and looked up. "This is my daughter," I said, pointing at her, my fingers shaking with anger. "You might like to see her and other women on their knees, but we don't belong there. We don't belong there." Anne rose to her feet. She glanced sideways at me, sheer amazement spreading over her face. I'm sure she'd never heard her mother talk like this. Then turned and faced the men. I could hear her breath rise and fall with her chest as we stood there, shoulder to shoulder, staring at their faces. "Women," one of them said. They walked away, leaving Anne and me staring at each other among the toothpaste and dental floss. I smiled at her. She smiled back. And though we didn't say a word, more was spoken between us in that moment than perhaps in our whole lives. I left the drugstore that day so internally jolted by the experience that everything in me began to shift. I sat in the car feeling like a newborn, dangled upside down and slapped. Throughout my awakening, I'd grown increasingly aware of certain attitudes that existed in our culture, a culture long dominated by men. The men in the drugstore were mirroring one attitude in particular, that of seeking power over another. Does that sound like anybody you have been seeing way too much of lately? Of staying up by keeping others down. Sitting in my car, replaying my statement back to those men that women do not belong on their knees, I knew I had uttered my declaration of intent. Nearly 40, I needed to rethink my life as a man-made woman. To take back my soul. Gradually, I began to see what I hadn't seen before, to feel things that until then had never dared to enter my heart. I became aware that as a woman, I'd been on my knees my whole life and not really known it. Let's shine the light on this. Most of all, I ached for the woman in me who had not yet been born, though I could not have told you then the reason for the ache. When this disenchantment, this ripeness begins, a woman's task is to conceive herself. If she does, the spark of her awakening is struck, and if she can give that awakening a tiny space in her life, it will develop into a full-blown experience. Good morning, Catherine. Glad you're here. A full-blown experience that one day she will want to mark and celebrate. Conception, labor, and birthing, metaphors thick with image and experiences of women, offer a bodily parable of the process of awakening. The parable tells us things we need to know about the way awakening works, the slow unfolding, sometimes hidden, always expanding nature of it, the inevitable queasiness, the need to nurture and attend to what inhabits us. The uncertainty about the outcomes, the fearful knowing that once we bring the new consciousness forth, our lives will never be the same. It tells us that and more. I've given birth to 2 children, but bringing them into the world was a breeze compared to birthing myself as a woman. Bringing forth a new, instinctual, powerful woman who is rooted in her own feminine center, who honors the sacredness of the feminine, and who speaks the feminine language of her own soul is never easy. Neither is it always welcomed. No kidding, right? I discovered that few people will rush over to tie a big pink bow on our mailbox. Yet there is no place so awake and alive as the edge of becoming. But more than that, birthing the kind of woman who can authentically say, my soul is my own. Good morning, Angie. Glad you are here. Sending you these words. These are amazing words. My soul is my own, and then embody it in her life, her spirituality, and her community is worth the risk and hardship. Today, 8 years after my awakening began, I realized that the women who are bringing about this kind of new female life are brand new beings among us. I keep meeting them. I keep hearing their stories. They confirm my own experience that somewhere along the course of a woman's life, usually when she has lived just long enough to see through some of the cherished notions of femininity that culture holds out to her, when she finally lets herself feel the limits and injustices of the female life and admits how her own faith tradition has contributed to that, when she at last stumbles in the dark hole made by the absence of the divine feminine presence, then the extraordinary thing I've been telling you about will happen. This woman will become pregnant with herself, with the symbolic female child who will, if given the chance, grow up to reinvent this woman's life. This female child is the new potential we all have to become women grounded in our own souls, women who discover the sacred feminine way, women who let loose their strength. In the end, we will reinvent not only ourselves, but also religion and spirituality and finance and politics and education and housing as they have been handed down to us. Nothing happens neatly on journeys like this. This is going to be messy. This is going to be messy. There you go. There we go. All right, awesome. There is no 1, 2, 3 program because it's not going to be the same for all of us. Each of us will have to walk this path, the unfolding of the divine feminine, and men are unfolding their divine feminine also. Not ditching the divine masculine. We need that also, but they must be in service of each other. They must be in balance. We can't have this imbalance that creates this warlike world we live in here. Not cool. Time to change. There are no guarantees, and no two journeys unfold the same way. Every woman's story of finding the sacred feminine brims with its own unique events, risks, complexities, pains, and rewards. And again, men are doing the divine feminine also, but really I believe it's going to be the women who lead the march. I don't want to say the charge, because that's that masculine language again, that warlike language. The march. Good morning, Susan. Glad you are here. Spiral Dance, book by Starhawk. There we go. There we go. And every story is a luminous thread that becomes part of a larger fabric, a fabric we are weaving together for the whole world, and this fabric is a thing of immense importance and beauty. I have a saying on my wall here. It's from Sark. The circles of women around us weave invisible nets of love that carry us when we're weak and sing with us when we are strong. And we are strong. Right now we are strong. We are strong. Step into it. I look back now and I am grateful. I recall that whenever I struggled, doubted, wondered if I could pull my thread into this fabric, someone or something would always appear. A friend, a stranger, a figure in a dream, a book, an experience, some shining part of nature, and remind me that this thing I was undertaking was holy to the core. I would learn again that it is all right for women to follow the wisdom in their souls, to name their truth, to embrace the sacred feminine, that there is undreamed voice, strength, and power in us. And that is what I have come to tell you. I have come over the wise distances to tell you. She is in us. So, what do you think? What are your thoughts? Women leading for a change. And again, that leadership is going to look very different than divine masculine leadership. And for many years, the last 40, 50 years, there we go, we're getting, yes, and she's got a chapter in this book also. The last 40, 50 years, it has kind of in many ways looked like women stepping into the divine masculine to try to compete with those who were leading the show. Now it's time to step out of that and into the divine feminine. Let it have its own path. It will run parallel to the divine masculine path. They'll weave together and come apart, and weave together and come apart. But it's going to be a whole new way of leading. A whole new way of leading. Not that we've seen ever before. We've seen pockets of it here and there. We've had leaders who are like this. But en masse, it's going to be a phenomenon. It's going to be something incredibly powerful to witness. So, I'd like you to maybe rewatch. Think about these words. Think about the circumstances in your own life that were like being that 14-year-old girl on her knees in front of two middle-aged, I'll guarantee you they were white, men. Time for change. Time for change. We absolutely, yes, we've tried to play the game the patriarchal way, and we've been pretty damn successful at it. It's not the game we're meant to play. We're not meant to play games. We're meant to walk the path of the divine feminine, balanced with the divine masculine. Can't wait to see what that all looks like. Happy Saturday. Have an awesome day. We'll see you again tomorrow. And remember, we are all capable of far more than we think we are. And when we link arms, we are a force to be reckoned with. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.